If you've clicked on this video, it is because your DMs are not turning into sales calls, okay? Now, it always comes down to 6 very distinct reasons. And if you're not booking the amount of calls that you want, or the amount of calls that you target yourself as a business owner, it's because of one or more of these 6 steps, okay? Now, I'm just gonna break it down for you one by one. So first we have too long replies. Now, I don't mean time, I'll go into this in a minute. Then we've got lack of direction, that's number 2. Number 3 is lack of directiveness, that's number 3. Number 4 is no pain discovery. This is normally the one that people go wrong at, okay? And I'll get to why that is shortly. Then we've got no urgency discovery. In my opinion, this is the most important part, okay? And then we've got too scripted. Now this thing here will kill a conversation before it even begins, okay? So we need to cut that off first before we even get to booking in sales calls, okay? So starting off with too long replies, okay? Now, what do I mean by this? So I've obviously got a mastermind that people join, and they normally share their screen with me, okay? And when they share their screen with me, I basically just look at their DMs and look as to why they're obviously not booking calls, right? And one of the recurring themes that I've seen before people work with me and before people go through the whole program is that their replies are just too long, okay? So let's say, for instance, a prospect is in the DMs with you and is sending you like quite long replies. Most people think that they have to like match the effort of that reply. So they have to give a reply in equal to or greater length, right? You don't. When I was setting for coaches, one thing I would do is I would keep my replies super short. Not to be like a dick, not to be really short with people, but it's just to be direct. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but when you give chunky replies, you're filling the conversation with so much fluff and unnecessary like messaging that it makes booking calls harder, because your prospect has got to emotionally and physically process your paragraph message before then sending their own paragraph message, okay? Now, your job is not to coach people in the DMs, okay? I'm going to talk about that later. I'm going to touch on that later because that's a fatal mistake that most people make. But your job's not to coach people in the DMs, right? Your job is to firstly find out what their problem is, right? First of all. Then you want to find out what their goal is, right? Then we want to find out how long they've been working towards that goal, how long they've been trying and attempting to get towards that goal. Our job is not to be a counselor and send text messages that are like this long, essentially. Like, that's not our job. Our job is to funnel the conversation to the next appropriate step whilst collecting the information that we need in order to book in a qualified sales call, okay? So if your replies are longer than 2 to 3 sentences, or 2 to 3 lines, then you need to really cut that down and cut that back, because what will happen is if you don't cut it back, your prospect is going to be so focused on the actual length of the text message, they're going to firstly their chances of reply is a lot less, because they've got to read, process and respond to more information. And also, you're not going to get how do I word this? You're not going to get the effectiveness of your questioning to be as present in the text that you send, because you've got so much filler fluff in the sentences. The better you utilize shorter, sharper questions, the easier it becomes for you to book sales calls, okay? And that's a fact. I've gone from first message to call booked in 6 messages with 1-line sentences and answers. It's easy, right? But we need to really, really taper off the long replies, because you're not a counselor, okay? Your job isn't to counsel someone, your job is to coach. And when it comes to prospects and potential new clients, you don't need to be sending Bible text messages back to them. You need to be short, sharp, concise, straight to the point, and just move the conversation to the next step in the little as little as time possible. Okay, ideally. In an ideal world, sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes not as long. But we want to essentially be as direct as we can. And I'm gonna touch on that thirdly after the next part. But we want to be as direct as we can and as short as we can. I'm not saying be a dick, right? So I'm not saying go from that to sending blunt messages like that, but we want to basically acknowledge, compliment, and ask. Okay, you don't always have to compliment, you can acknowledge and ask. So like, let's say for instance, someone says to you that they want to lose 10 kilograms, they want to fit in their clothes better, they want to feel better, feel more confident. We don't need to reply with a long ass like question or anything like that. We can say, okay, amazing, I love those goals. What do you feel like is holding you back from achieving that? You know, that's literally like 2 lines. We don't need to, you know, send extended text messages for no reasons at all, right? Okay, so that's the first thing that keeps people from booking sales calls in their DMs. Okay, their replies are too long, right? And just to reiterate this point, I need to cap that letter off, but just to reiterate this point and to really drive it home, your job is not to be a counsellor, right? Your job's to get someone into the DM, sorry, and then get them onto a call. Okay, it's not your job to send messages like that back, and it's killing your chance of booking a sales call because prospects lose interest, right? The emotion dissipates out of the conversation because of the length of the messages, and it decreases the chances of you booking calls. Okay, so I'm glad we've got that ticked off first. Now let's speak about lack of direction, because this might seem a bit weird to talk about because obviously people are in the DMs for a reason, but man, I've seen so many coaches have this and it holds them back big time. Okay, so when you, I keep standing like this. Anyway, I don't know, this floor's a bit creaky as well, so there's that to deal with too. But anyway, back to more relevant things. When you go into the DMs, okay, and when you're talking to people, I want you to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this message? Okay, so if I just put this down for a minute, if I was to draw, this is a bit awkward. Okay, so if I was to draw, I don't know if you can see this. So point A, point B, urgency, call. You can't see this probably because maybe the focus on the camera is out of touch, but I mean, I should definitely just get a bigger whiteboard, shouldn't I? Yeah. So, right, so in a conversation, right, so in a DM scenario, there's 4 stages, right? We've got point A, point B, urgency, call, okay? There are like other stages outside of that, like build trust, okay? I'm going to sneeze. Anyway, so there are other stages outside of that, but it breaks down into the main 4. So main 4, point A, point B, urgency, book the call, right? Obviously in between there, we've got like the qualification stage. So qual, what else have we got? I think that's it really, yeah. So point A, point B, you know, we've got the qualification stage in terms of value, time, money. So we've got that sprinkled in. Then we've got urgency. So why do they need to do something now? Right? And what we can also do as well, instead of creating urgency, we can flip it on its head. So instead of asking them, why do you feel like this is something that you need to do now? You can reverse that question and ask them, okay, so like if you don't make this change or you don't, you know, work towards X, Y, and Z, what sort of consequence do you feel like that's going to have on you in the long term, in the next 6 months? Okay, so that's what we want to do. But anyway, in terms of lack of direction, right? So I want you to ask yourself, what does this message that I'm sending get me closer towards? Does it get me closer from going from point A to point B? Okay. Does it get me closer from going from point B to urgency? Does it get me closer to going from urgency to the call? Now, what I see a lot of people mistakenly do is that they either A, spend too long doing discovery, or B, they don't do discovery at all, right? And then they just coach people in the DMs, right? And I've seen this like time and time again where people will coach people in the DMs. There'll be no direction of the conversation, and then they're confused when they don't book in sales calls. Okay. Now, in order for you to have direction in the DMs, you need to have a framework. Okay. You need to have an actual process to the conversation, right? And having a framework and having a process keeps that like North Star within the conversation, and you know at all times, right, I'm going here, I'm taking the conversation here, I need to find this out, I need to find that out, then I'm offering them a call. Because if you don't have any direction in the DMs, what you're going to do is you're going to sit in the DMs and you're going to essentially talk for the sake of it, okay? And fill the conversation with fluff, and you'll probably send long replies. But that's what you'll do first of all. But second of all, you'll ask questions for the sake of asking questions, right? Which is going to make the prospect think, what the fuck, for a start, and then they're going to get bored of the conversation, okay? And when someone gets bored of the conversation, they're going to ghost you. And then they're going to ghost you, and then you're going to have to follow up with them, okay? Now, depending on what, like, teachings you've been taught or how you've learned to follow up with people, you're going to follow up with gifts. You're going to say, oh, are you still there? All of which I disagree with, but anyway, a conversation for another time. But what you want to essentially ask yourself is, where am I actually going with this conversation? Okay? Where is this conversation taking me? Is it taking me closer towards a call or closer towards confusion? Okay? Now, the 5 steps that I recommend that you follow is point A, discovery, where they are now, what they've tried, why it hasn't worked. Okay? Point B, discovery, where they want to be, why do they want to be there, how would their life change if they got there? Okay. Then we've got urgency discovery. So why do they need to do it now? Why not wait? Why not do it themselves? What if they don't do it? You know, consequence discovery. And then booking in the call. Do they want to have a conversation on Zoom to have help with this? Okay. It's that simple. And that is the direction that your conversation needs to follow. You do not want to go off on tangents talking about people's kids, people's hair, people's holidays. If you're still asking people about their holidays in 2025, then, I mean, I don't even have any words for that, but that needs to change, okay? Because you're not there to pretend to be their friend, okay? I've seen a lot of people do this where they pretend to be friends with the prospect, and it's just disingenuous, okay? Now, you're not selling to people, of course, because the sale isn't even a possibility yet, but don't pretend that you're not there. You're there trying to like ask them about their day and ask them about work and ask them about their holiday, because it's very disingenuous. And I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, you know, sales isn't for me. I don't like sales. I don't like, you know, I wouldn't say pushing people because that's not the word for it, but they don't like sales, right? But then they're the same people who will say, oh, I go and ask people about their holidays. It's like, okay, so I'm going on a bit of a side tangent here, but it's like, okay, so you don't like sales, but you'll pretend to be someone's friend in order to get the sale because it feels more comfortable. I personally would rather someone just be like direct and honest with me than try to be my friend for the sake of a conversation. Okay, but anyway, I keep digressing. You need to have direction, and you need to ask yourself at every point, where is this message that I'm about to send, or where is this question that I'm about to ask taking me? Is it taking me, you know, further down the conversational pipeline, so to speak, or is it just creating more noise, more confusion, more fluff in the DMs? Okay, so that's directiveness. Now we've ticked that off. Now we are going to tackle a big one. So what do I mean by lacking directiveness? Okay, now this is all to do with authority. Okay, now when I say lacking directiveness, what I essentially mean is that coaches beat around the bush, okay? They beat around the bush of the conversation, and they try to act like the prospect's friend, and they try to pretend that they're, you know, really, really interested in their life. We both know you're not. We both know that. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a dick, but we both know that you're trying to have a conversation with them to get them onto a sales call, right? That's the whole point of messaging them, because you're not taking time out of your day to message people on social media just for a laugh and just for a giggle. We both know why you're there, right? Now, what I mean by the lack of directness is I've seen a lot of people just be beat around the bush, like in the DMs. Being direct with people is one of the best things that you can do, right? For your authority as well, because when we need to look at a scenario where we've got someone who is in pain and someone who's the solution to that pain, you need to remember who actually has the power, because I've banged on about this, right? but the person who has the product has the power, right? Okay. Now I'm gonna write that down here. So power equals product. Actually, it's supposed to be the other way around, isn't it? Nice one. So the person who has the power, the person who has the product has the power, right? So you can help someone. This is more of a psychological mindset thing, right? Not so much like a sales tactical thing, but if you've got the ability to cause genuine change in someone's life through whatever medium that is, business mentoring, health coaching, mindset coaching, whatever that may be, if you've got the ability to cause genuine change in someone's life, then why are you essentially putting yourself on the back foot in terms of status? Because you need to realize that you are the one that can actually help that person. I've said this like time and time again, but you're the one that can help that person, but you're letting them run the show, okay? Because you're not being direct, you're not basically just being straightforward with them, and you're beating around the bush. And what I see a lot of people fall short on is that they put themselves on the back foot. And when I say the back foot, I'll explain what I mean. But what that essentially means is they let the prospect control the conversation, and they let the prospect basically run the show because they're too afraid to be direct, right? You want to cut straight to the point with people, because that is what helps you move conversations along. I'm going to pop this down again. But cutting straight to the point and not beating around the bush, so to speak, will help you move conversations towards the DMs, towards a sales call through the DMs, right? If you're not booking sales calls, chances are you're just not getting to the point straight, like quick enough, okay? Person has a problem, this is what they've tried, blah, 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 blah. You've got the solution. They want to potentially integrate that solution into their life, okay? There's no need to beat around the bush and to just waste time not being direct. Just be direct with people. Just ask people the questions that you need to know the answers to, and don't be not afraid, but don't be afraid to either yourself or to train your team to just be really direct with people, okay? When I book calls for myself, or when I take sales calls for myself, rarely, not because I don't sell, because I close in the DMs, but when I'm setting for myself, right, or if I'm having a conversation with a prospect, I am just straight to the point, okay? Reason being is it gives off like authority. If you're just straight to the point, it gives off authority. Think about when you go to the doctors, right? The doctor doesn't sit there with their, I think it's called a stethoscope. They don't sit there like, oh, Janet, how's your day? Oh, okay. Oh, how was Morocco last weekend? Oh, how's David been doing? I don't know why I'm using like British, just B2C everyday examples. But what I'm essentially trying to illustrate here is that they don't go, oh, how's your day? Yeah. Okay, how are the kids? They're like, okay, Janet, what is wrong? Okay, like why are you here today? Or like, why are you in pain today? Like, what's causing you to be in pain? Okay, cool. Have you been doing this? Have you tried that? What have you been trying? Why hasn't that worked? Blah, 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 blah. Prescription. Okay, obviously we're handing out prescriptions in a metaphorical sense. And the reason that we have so much respect for like a doctor or something is because they're so to the point. And I can guarantee you that if you are like to the point with people, obviously not blunt and like a bit of a dick, you are going to gain more respect and more authority, which is going to help you sell more, okay? Because you're being straight to the point, okay? Now then, moving on to pain discovery. Now, I really feel like it's important to illustrate this with an artistic drawing, but I can't draw to save my life, okay? So you're gonna have to bear with, okay? So let's say I don't want to bend down, but let's say, for instance, we have an iceberg, right? I'm just going to pretend this is an iceberg. I don't know if you can see that, and let's say we have a line of water. Okay, nice. So let's say, for instance, this water is what's known as that water is known as the surface level. Okay, so in sales, what that essentially means, the surface level, is that the prospect isn't giving you emotional, detailed answers. They're giving you very generic, I want to lose weight answers. Okay, so when it comes to pain discovery, I like to view it as an iceberg. Okay, now let's pretend that the top of the line, the tip of the iceberg, right? I'm sure everyone's aware of like how icebergs work. So let's just draw this for a sec. That is absolutely class. Anyway, so I'm sure you're aware of how icebergs work, the mechanics of an iceberg. So basically, when you look at an iceberg, I think it's 80% of it's underwater. I'm not sure on the statistics, don't quote me, just use ChatGPT or something. But let's say, for instance, to relate this to pain discovery, let's say, for instance, we've got the iceberg here, and we've got the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so this is what's known as the surface level. So we're not really uncovering any like hidden emotional pain, or we're not really doing any pain discovery here. We're just learning at the tip of the iceberg what that prospect wants. Okay, so the reason that people tend to not book sales calls or as many sales calls as they want is because they are unable to find out the emotional needs of that person, which leads them to not getting the call booked in. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you had a big hairy problem right now. Okay, so let's say, for instance, it's called a bleeding. Oh, nice. It's called a bleeding neck problem. Okay. Now, what this essentially means is, if I came and stabbed you in the neck, your neck is bleeding, right? And you're bleeding out. And chances are you're probably going to die. I mean, yeah, you probably would die. Not to be morbid or anything, but you'd probably die. Now, if you were to die, let's say you have a family, you would never see the family again. You'd never see your kids grow up. You'd never see them get married, right? So it's pretty important that you solve the bleeding neck problem, because if you don't, there are some serious consequences, and the emotional consequences are quite severe, right? So if I said to you, right, that this is kind of a sales call thing, but it's good to reverse engineer this into the DMs to get them onto a sales call. But let's say, for instance, I stabbed you in the neck with this pen, you know, whatever, that's just me stabbing you. And then you get offered life-saving surgery for, let's say you have £2,000 in your bank account, and I say, right, the surgery is 4k, so double what you've got. You're going to find a way to get that £2,000 that you need. You are going to find a way. The reason being is because there is such an emotional weight attached to the problem, okay? If you don't solve this problem, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. Now, this is more so consequence discovery, but I just want to illustrate the depth of emotion that people feel when it comes to problems, right? So the problems here that we get a surface level, right? So let's just take this into a really generic fitness context, right? So lose weight. Or for women, tone up. That's the generic spiel that everyone gets. Oh, I want to lose weight, I want to tone up, I want to put on muscle. Awesome. Haven't heard that before. Anyway, so that's the surface level answer that people give you as to why they want to do something. But, big but here, below the water, below the surface level, there are emotional things that we have not discovered that are contributing to why this person wants to do what they said that they want to do. So let's pick losing weight, okay? So I want to lose weight, right? I want to lose 10 kilograms. I use this example all the time, right? But like, let's say, for instance, how can I do this without, actually, So let's say, for instance, that, am I even in frame? Yeah, I am. So let's say, for instance, that someone wants to lose weight. They want to lose 10 kilograms, right? So the question we have to ask ourselves is like, why? Yeah, I'm not going to keep squatting whilst I'm talking, but the question that we need to ask ourselves is why? Like, what is driving them to want to lose 10 kilograms, right? Like, perfectly normal, like people want to lose weight, but why? Okay? And it's our job to get as far down to the bottom of the iceberg as we can in the DMs and on the sales call as well, to actually get someone on a sales call. Because if someone does not experience or does not give you answers below the surface level, they're not pulling out pain. They're not realizing the pain that they're in, which translates into them not getting onto a sales call, which is why you'll hear people say to you, oh, I'll think about it, or they'll ghost you, or they just won't get on a call with you, or they'll just ask you for the price and then wander off, because we haven't got them to open up. And what I see a lot of people do is they'll get to the stage in the conversation where they're like asking someone about their goals or whatever, and then they'll say, oh, I want to lose weight. Oh, okay. And then they'll leave it there. They're like, okay, what have you tried to lose weight? It's like, you're skipping the whole point of sales. when it comes to like selling something, in your brain, it's going to make sense for you, right? Because you're like, right, okay, this person wants to lose weight. I can help them do that. This person wants to increase their confidence. I can help them do that. This person wants to improve their training. I can help them do that. Logistically, for you, it makes a ton of sense. It doesn't make sense for the prospect to not join, okay? But in their mind, it's not about logistics. It's not about the logic behind something, right? It's not black and white. This person can help. It's emotional. There's more emotional things behind making the decision rather than, oh, this is just awesome service, right? And we need to find out why someone really needs to do something so that we can obviously get them onto a sales call, right? Because like I said, if they stay here, if they stay surface level, they're not going to get onto a sales call, right? Which is going to lead to you getting ghosted, ignored, just asked for the price and left. And you're not going to be a winner, right? No one's going to be a winner. Okay, so that is why a lot of people do not get people on sales calls, is because they have no pain discovery. Now, what you need to realize as well, and what you need to understand, is there's a difference in pain. Someone wanting to lose weight but not being able to lose weight is painful, yeah? Okay, cool. But not satisfying unmet emotional needs that are further down the iceberg, that is pain, right? Pain isn't someone saying, oh, I want to lose weight. Oh, like that's not pain. That's just a goal. Pain is someone not feeling enough or not feeling good enough for their partner because their partner doesn't look at them the same way that they used to because they put on weight. That's pain. Pain is not, oh yeah, I just want to lose weight. So if you think you're doing pain discovery, chances are you're not, right? Chances are you're not. I did probably the best sales call of my career. I'm 24. What day is it today? Thursday the 22nd. Okay, so I did the best I did the best sales call I ever did 2 days ago. Now, this obviously isn't related to sales calls, but it's important to illustrate the point. I got someone to like basically give me the iceberg, right? So we went from want to lose weight to increase confidence to what was their pain? So they wanted to not be seen as the fat auntie, and they wanted to be seen as the auntie that's in shape, is healthy, and wants to be an example to her nieces. Yeah, nieces. So can you see the contrasting levels of pain? So we've got, oh, I just want to lose weight, to I want to become an example and I don't want to be seen as the auntie who's fat, and I want to set a good, healthy example for what my children can grow up to be and how to act. That's pain, right? You're not getting someone on a call just because they want to lose weight, because, oh yeah, you can help them lose weight. Everyone else every other coach on the planet can help them lose weight, but you need to understand them at a deeper level and understand the deep emotional reasons as to why they actually want to do something, because everyone's got them. Everyone has got them. I'm making this YouTube video right now because I want to grow my personal brand. I want to grow my following. I want to get subscribers, and I also want to book sales calls and help people off the back of it, right? Why do I want to do that? Because I want to build a massive business. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to provide safety, stability, and financial freedom for myself and my loved ones, family, whatever. That's why I want to do something. So there's always an emotional driver behind every person making a decision, or every person wanting something. It's your point. It's your point. It's your goal and your job to find that out. Okay. So that is pain discovery, and obviously, I illustrated that fantastically with my world-class drawing. Okay. Now we are moving on to pain discovery's cousin. Okay. Now, these two go hand in hand, right? In terms of significance, in terms of impact, in terms of importance, because without any pain points, you're not going to find any urgency, right? But also, without any urgency, you're not going to get people onto a call, okay? Now, the simplest way to put this is to split it into two categories. Establishing urgency, establishing consequences, right? They both do the same thing. What the job of either part of this is to get someone to act, okay? How many times have you gone onto the DMs, had a conversation with someone, got them towards a call, and then they've said, I'll think about it. Okay, think about it, right? or they've given you an objection, right? Oh, I don't have time for this. Or what are the common objections to a call? Oh, I don't have time for it. I need to think about it. Can you send me over the details and I'll let you know? Basically, the language there is, I'm putting this off, right? Without them explicitly saying it to you, that is what the language is suggesting, okay? Now, the reason that people put anything off is because it doesn't feel urgent to do or to solve or to act on now, okay? And that comes from establishing a lack of urgency, but it also comes from establishing a lack of pain. Because if just to illustrate this, if I stabbed you in the neck with a knife, you'd need to get that checked out immediately, right? Same as if I shot you in the leg with a gun, you need to act on that and get that seen to immediately. If I accidentally cut you with a piece of paper and I gave you a paper cut in your forearm, you're not going to go to the hospital because firstly, you don't need that level of help. Your pain isn't that painful and there's no consequences to you doing that. But if I shot you in the leg with a shotgun, you're going to have to go to the hospital because it's painful, there's dire consequences, and you need to get this solved now, okay? Now, I'm not saying that you need to create the same level of pain as shooting someone in the leg with a shotgun, but you do need to create a strong enough level of pain and a strong enough level of urgency and consequences that will cause someone to act now, okay? And you can do this through 2 questions, okay? I was going to add in a bit about self-selling, but I would keep that for the sales call. And what self-selling is basically designing questions and asking questions in a way that will get the prospect to cut off any objections and will actually get them to sell themselves. I'm going to touch on that in a future video though. But anyway, there are 2 questions that you can ask to establish any level of urgency, right? Number 1, consequence question. So just to create another example, let's say for instance someone needs to lose weight. We've been through this whole before, and let's say for instance they say that they want to lose weight for their health. Okay, maybe they're scared of diabetes, maybe they're scared of heart disease, maybe further health complications. I've had sales calls with people like this in the past month, and one question I've always asked them, and you can use the same questions in the DMs as you want to on a sales call. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. One question that I've asked is, okay, I don't mean to be negative Nancy. You don't have to say this in the DMs. You can just say it plainly. But what I've said is, okay, I don't mean to be negative, but let's say, for instance, we go another 6 months and X, Y, and Z, referencing the problems that they've given you, is still the same, or you still feel the same, you're in the same position. What sort of consequences do you feel like that would have on you? Or how do you feel like that would impact your life? How do you feel like that would impact your health, your family? If you sell a business service, where someone gets a financial ROI, you can ask them about their wealth. Now, they're the 3 most important things to humans: health, wealth, and relationships. Okay, so we want to touch on how does it impact your health and your relationships, because when you're selling B2C fat loss or whatever B2C product to do with fitness, it's going to be health and relationships. It's not going to be wealth, because you're not making someone richer unless you coach executives. So anyway, sidetracked. What you want to ask is, if you don't solve X, or if you don't achieve X, what will be the consequences of that? What happens if you don't make the change? What happens if you don't take action? Okay, and this is going to pull out consequences, which will internally get them to register the consequences, which is going to cause them to act. Okay, if you are not asking this question before booking a call, you are leaving yourself an 89% chance of someone turning around and shelving this for a future date. I've not calculated that. I've just pulled that number out of thin air. What I'm trying to say is the chance is very high, because they've got no reason to do this now. They've got no reason to do this now. This can wait. This can wait for a better time, or when they've got more time, or just the right time, which doesn't exist. Okay, and the only way that you stop people from having that mindset and putting this off and not booking that call is through establishing consequences. Okay, now on the flip side, this is a more positive question to ask. Well, actually it's probably not. But this is the flip side question. So this is an urgency related question. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to establish a bit of a timeline, right? So let's say for instance, someone's been struggling to do X, Y, and Z. They've been trying on their own to lose weight for 12 months. Okay, let's just say that. But they can't do it, right? I always like to say to them, okay, to establish urgency, I always like to say, okay, like, obviously, like, you've been trying to do this for 12 months, right? What's got you to the point now where you're like, right, I need to get actual help with this. I need to do something about this instead of you potentially carrying on as you are for the next 6 months. We're automatically assuming that they need to do something, they want to do something now, which is going to get them thinking about that, which is going to then give you an answer that you want, right? Oh, well, I've just got to the point where I realize nothing is working for me and I need to actually achieve this goal because X, Y, and Z. Brilliant. We've got the reason for urgency, okay? Which is what we need. We need urgency, we need consequences, because they're the two drivers of action. Without them, no call. Or you might get someone on a call, but then they don't show up because they're like, I'll put it off. Oh, I don't need to do this. Because there's no urgency or no consequence to them not doing it, okay? These two are the most important. 4 and 5 are the most important, because without that, no call, right? Without that, no call. And without deeper levels of pain discovery, no call, okay? Now you might think, oh, I'm asking people what their goals are, or I'm asking people what they struggle with, and they're going to say eating. That's not pain discovery. That is child's play pain discovery. That's surface level. If you want to book, if you want to get people on calls and get people to pay in full, they need to have problems worth solving for them to pay in full, which only comes through discovery here. Whether it's in the DMs, whether it's on a sales call, they need to have deeper levels of pain felt by themselves in order for them to even want to invest in something in the first place. Okay. Now, last but not least, too scripted. Okay. I feel like this is going to be a rant. Right, okay. If you're sat in the DMs and you've got a script from someone who you've invested in for help, right, whatever, and you're following that script to a T, you are literally shooting yourself in the foot. You're taking out a gun, you're aiming it at your foot, and you're firing, okay? Reason being, right, I don't just say this to shit on people so that they think, okay, I need a framework, this guy can help me. I'm not just doing this to create problems for you to want to invest in me. That's not what I'm doing at all. But the reason is that when you have a script, it's so rigid. And when I say rigid, it doesn't suit every conversation, because what I see people do is they bounce from question to question to question to question because they've been told to by a business mentor or a mentor figure, and they don't react, respond, or tailor that conversation to that specific person, okay? When you run through a script, people can tell. You've got that energy in the conversation where it's just question, 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 question. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have like a framework. I've literally given you a framework in this video. But what I see a lot of people do wrong is they sit there and they have go-to questions and they're just asking the questions and running people through and then offering a call. That's not a conversation, and you're not going to find out deeper levels of pain discovery when you use a script. Okay, you're not going to, because it doesn't give you the flexibility to respond, react, and dig deeper into someone's pain, because you're so focused on, right, okay, I've got 8 out of 10 of the scripted questions asked. I just need to ask the other 2, and then I'm good to go for a call. Okay, we want to pass through the checkpoints of qualification and discovery, not the checkpoints of a script. Okay, that's a bit of a mini rant, but I see so many people do it. So many people do it. And it's just, yeah, it's crazy to me that people follow a script in the DMs. It is crazy. I understand that people have VAs and they need to give them resources. A script is not it. And another thing as well is when you have a script designed for you by someone else, right, who isn't you, who doesn't have your personality, who doesn't have your belief system, you're trying to act in a way that is potentially unaligned with you. Okay, you might not talk like someone else, right? You might not have the same personality as someone else. You might not have the same belief system as someone else. And you using someone else's script isn't going to make you sound genuine and authentic. It's just going to make you sound like a salesperson, which obviously you don't want. So those are the 6 reasons as to why you're not booking sales calls in the DMs, or why you're not booking as many sales calls as you want. I mean, I guess, you know, once you've solved all this through this video, you're going to probably want to learn how to actually close sales calls, Okay. Now, obviously, if you want a hand with any of this stuff, just click the link down below. I've got a free training that you can have, or you can find more information about working with me. But yeah, I suppose, like, obviously, you know, you're doing all this, you keep your replies nice and concise, you have a direction, you're very direct with people, you're discovering the pain very well, you're creating urgency, and the conversation is free flowing. You're going to get more people on calls. So I guess the next step for yourself is probably to look at ways to actually take a call from start to close and pay in full. Now, I've got a video on my channel about that, so you should probably just go and watch that next and get to closing.